Hey guys, welcome back to Loft Sports. I'm Tyler.
I'm Seth.
Today we're going to be looking at the Week 12 review of the college football season. Some big storylines. There were a lot of key matchups, big upsets, big teams that survived to advance to another day. But I think the main storyline out of this last Saturday was Tua's injury.
Yeah, I mean, we debated last week, is Alabama still kind of in the playoff mix? Now they're officially out. I don't care if they have one loss or two loss. It was debatable with Tua. With Matt Jones, it's not even a question. To me, personally, some people might disagree with this, but I think this is kind of a psychological thing with Nick Saban right now. I kind of told you about this a little bit today. I think the whole situation is just kind of how Nick Saban has lost a little bit of that edge, a little bit of that fire, gotten a little too casual. Hell, he's won enough, so I understand it, but Nick Saban 5 years ago, I don't care if he wants to practice a 2-minute drill, I don't care if it's first half or not. If his quarterback is obviously not 100%, he's out in that situation. Even 2 years ago, he's out in that situation. He leaves Tua in, the injury happens, and I'm not saying it's Saban's fault or it's Tua's fault or anything, but I think some of the blame has to be put on Saban, and you have to question why he was in the game. I think that's what a lot of fans are doing.
Yeah, I think that's a whole topic in and of itself, but I do agree that Alabama is done. I don't think without their star quarterback, they're strong enough with the schedule that they have, or lack thereof, really.
Yep.
The only team they've played is LSU. Even if they beat Auburn, that'll be Auburn's fourth loss. So I think at this point, Alabama can just hope for a New Year's Six bowl at best.
Yep.
Probably the biggest game of the weekend, Oklahoma was getting trashed by Baylor and comes back from 25 points down to keep their slim playoff hopes alive.
What an epic choke job by Baylor. I've talked to you about this plenty of times over the years. I think in football there's a certain tier of where you belong and where you should fall, and sometimes the game knows that, and I think you saw that with Baylor. Just a team that, they're on the up and come again, everything like that, but they're not there. They don't deserve the spotlight. They don't have the culture there just quite yet with their program, and that showed. Blow a 28-3 lead. I know Oklahoma's good, but they had their whole season literally in the palm of their hands, and they just let it slip.
Yeah, I feel bad for Baylor. They've had some history recently where I don't feel so bad for them, unfortunately, off the field stuff. But that environment was awesome. Their new stadium is so sick down there by the river. The sailgating and game day was awesome. It was unfortunate that they couldn't figure out a way to score any points in the second half and win that game. They're still not out of it yet, which we'll talk about in a minute, but that was a serious blow to their playoff hopes. Another team that suffered a major blow in their playoff hopes, Minnesota, runs out of magic in Iowa City. Yeah,
not a big surprise. We had both picked Iowa. We had just mentioned Kinnick over the last few years seems to always knock off a really good top 10 team these last few years, and everything just kind of had that writing on the wall. That happened this week. Great story for Minnesota this year. Great for PJ Fleck. But like you said, magic ran out. Iowa with the big win. And now Minnesota is still in control with the Big Ten West. They might not be out of the playoffs yet. I think they're going to lose a game before, and I don't think they're going to win the West. I think that'll be Wisconsin, but we'll talk about that in future videos. But a big storyline, and the magic, like you said, is now ran out.
I will say, though, Minnesota showed some character. Iowa jumped all over them out to a 17-point lead in the first half. That stadium was rocking. It looked like Minnesota was exhausted from the jubilation of the win the week before. Give the Gophers credit, though. They found themselves and got back into that game, had a chance at the end. And then Penn State, the team they beat last week, they had a dogfight with Indiana. They survived. Now the game of their season is coming up, which we'll talk about more in our preview. But Penn State survived a very good Indiana team.
A very surprisingly good Indiana team coming out of nowhere. This really wasn't a team too many people talked about. There was even more talk about Minnesota being good this year than there was Indiana. Great job by Tom Allen and his crew this year. A couple big wins, but Penn State just too much on the day. And even though it was a dogfight, talent eventually takes over, and we saw that with Penn State.
And all they needed to do was win, and they did just that. Lastly, Georgia clears one of their final hurdles. They still got a couple games left against so-so opponents, but this was their biggest hurdle before Atlanta. They clinch the East. They take down Auburn.
It was a great win for Georgia, kind of in a way. Doesn't necessarily make up for the loss earlier in the year against South Carolina, but like you said, solidified themselves. They will represent the SEC in Atlanta, or the SECs, and going forward, keeps their playoff hopes intact.
I can't think of a team that has 3 better wins than Georgia's. They have a win over Auburn, they have a win over Florida, and they have a win over Notre Dame. And though the scores weren't lopsided, if you watched those 3 games, which for the majority I have, they were the better team convincingly than all 3 of those teams.
Really, the only team you can say that has that many wins is probably LSU. But, I mean, LSU is doing it. They're number 1 in the country for a reason.
Right. So that leaves us with Georgia, LSU in the SEC.
Yes.
Clemson, Ohio State continue to roll.
Yep.
And then we've got Utah and Oregon, which look like they're on a collision course to meet in the Pac-12 title. Whether or not the winner will get in, that will be the hot debate. I think Tua's injury opens a door for that. And then, of course, we still got Oklahoma and Baylor, which could potentially see each other in a rematch. So a lot of football to be played. Thank you guys so much. We'll come at you with our preview video here later in the week. This is Tyler and Seth with Loft Sports signing off.